I have spent more than a quarter of a century studying the habits, thoughts, and actions of men and women who have risen to great heights of achievement, as well as those who have failed. In all my research, I have discovered that failure is rarely caused by lack of opportunity, talent, or intelligence. More often, it is the result of something far more insidious: fear. There are 6 basic fears that lurk in the human mind. These fears are subtle, persistent, and destructive. They do not always announce themselves with a shout. Instead, they whisper doubt, hesitation, and caution until your great dreams shrink to fit the size of your comfort zone. Unless you master these fears, you will never master yourself. And without self-mastery, no amount of talent or ambition can bring lasting success. The 6 basic fears. Fear of poverty, the most destructive of all fears. It robs men and women of initiative, replaces faith with doubt, and keeps them chained to a life of scarcity. Fear of criticism. This fear keeps people from acting on their ideas, from speaking their minds, and from daring to be different. It enslaves them to the opinions of others. Fear of ill health. The constant expectation of sickness destroys concentration, breaks down courage, and leaves the mind fixed on limitation instead of possibility. Fear of loss of love. This fear breeds jealousy, suspicion, and self-pity. It blinds people to opportunity and drives them to destructive emotional extremes. Fear of old age. Not merely the fear of growing older, but the belief that age robs life of value and opportunity. Fear of death, the fear of the unknown, which can sap one's enthusiasm for living fully in the present moment. The origin of fear. These fears are not inherited through the blood. They are learned, absorbed from the environment, from the careless words of others, and from the influence of those who have surrendered to their own limitations. Because they are learned, they can be unlearned. Remember this: fears are nothing more than states of mind, and every state of mind can be transformed by deliberate effort. Faith, courage, and positive expectation can be cultivated until fear has no room to live. How fear sabotages your goals. Each of these 6 fears is a thief. The fear of poverty steals your willingness to take calculated risks. The fear of criticism steals your freedom to express your ideas. The fear of ill health steals your mental vitality. The fear of loss of love steals your emotional balance. The fear of old age steals your drive to begin anew. The fear of death steals your zest for life itself. One fear alone can cripple progress, but combined, they form an invisible prison that keeps a man from ever knowing his true potential. In the chapters that follow, I will take you through each fear one by one. I will show you its symptoms, its hidden influence, and, most importantly, the precise methods by which you may banish it from your mind. For when you conquer fear, you free the very power that will carry you to the achievement of your definite major purpose. The fear of poverty is the most destructive of all the basic fears. It is the parent of doubt, hesitation, and indecision. It paralyzes the faculty of imagination, kills self-reliance, and undermines enthusiasm. This fear will keep a man in a job he hates, surrounded by conditions he despises, simply because he dreads the uncertainty of change. I have seen this fear turn brilliant minds into slaves not to a master of flesh and blood, but to a set of circumstances they believe they cannot change. Poverty itself is not the worst enemy. It is the fear of poverty that does the real damage. For poverty may be temporary, but fear of poverty becomes permanent unless it is rooted out. The subtle symptoms of the fear of poverty. You may not recognize this fear in yourself at first glance. It rarely introduces itself with words like, "I am afraid of being poor." Instead, it hides behind attitudes and habits such as indecision. You delay making important choices, hoping circumstances will decide for you. Procrastination. You put off action until the right time, which never comes. Excuses and justifications. You tell yourself, "I'm just being cautious," when in truth you are being controlled by fear. Envy of others' success. You resent those who have achieved wealth, secretly believing it is out of reach for you. Worry and anxiety over bills. You dwell on lack instead of creating plans for abundance. Playing it too safe. You avoid all financial risk, even when the reward could greatly improve your condition. These symptoms are not harmless. Left unchecked, they destroy ambition and imprison you in mediocrity. The origin of this fear. If bile pursue diagnosis. The fear of poverty has been deliberately cultivated by society. Governments, industries, and even families have used it to keep people obedient and dependent. From early childhood, most of us are taught to value security above opportunity, to seek safe wages instead of creative enterprise. We are warned about losing everything, but seldom taught how to create anything. Understand this. Every man who has risen to success has done so by replacing the fear of poverty with a burning desire for achievement. The cure for the fear of poverty. You cannot simply wish this fear away. It must be replaced. Here are the precise methods I have found effective. Adopt a definite chief aim. When your mind is consumed with a clear, definite goal, there is no room left for fear to dwell. Write your goal down. Read it aloud twice daily. Build faith through auto-suggestion. Faith is the antidote to fear. Speak affirmations daily that affirm your ability to create wealth and opportunity. Repeat them until they are accepted by your subconscious. Make quick, decisive choices. Poverty thrives on indecision. Train yourself to make decisions promptly and stick to them unless solid evidence suggests a change. Associate with bold thinkers. Fear is contagious, but so is courage. Spend time with those who talk of opportunity rather than lack. Act. Despite uncertainty, you will never eliminate all risk. Begin now with what you have. Action kills fear. Visualize abundance daily. What the mind sees repeatedly, it begins to believe. See yourself already in possession of the success you seek. The man who conquers the fear of poverty places himself in the ranks of those who shape the world, rather than those who are shaped by it. The instant you replace this fear with faith in your ability to earn, create, and serve, you will feel a release of energy that has been held back for years. Remember, money is only a tool, a servant to be directed by an intelligent mind. The true wealth is not in the currency you hold, but in the belief that you can always produce more through the use of your mind. The second basic fear, and one nearly as destructive as the fear of poverty, is the fear of criticism. This fear has killed more ideas, destroyed more talent, and stifled more ambition than any other single force in human experience, save poverty itself. I have met men and women with brilliant plans who never moved beyond the dreaming stage because they feared what others would say. They kept their ideas locked away, guarded by the chains of "what will they think of me?" and so their greatest contributions to the world went to the grave with them. Why this fear is so deadly? Criticism attacks a man's pride, his ego, and his sense of worth. Many people would rather live in quiet failure than risk open disapproval. This fear is often planted in childhood, when well-meaning parents and teachers scold or ridicule a child's curiosity, ideas, or mistakes. Over time, the child learns not to act boldly, but to play it safe, to conform to the opinions of the crowd. The danger lies in this. The man who fears criticism does not truly live for himself. He lives by permission of others. The subtle symptoms of the fear of criticism. This fear rarely calls itself by name. You will recognize it by these signs. Excessive caution. You pass up opportunities because you fear someone may disapprove. Self-consciousness. You hesitate to speak, write, or create for fear of how you will be judged. Lack of initiative. You wait for others' approval before taking action. Over-conformity. You adopt the habits, opinions, and values of those around you to avoid standing out. Reluctance to try new things. You fear failure, not because of the loss itself, but because of how the failure will be perceived. The origin of this fear. The fear of criticism is born of our desire for approval and acceptance. The trouble is, this desire can become a prison when we give it more weight than our own convictions. Society rewards conformity and punishes originality, at least at first. Every great innovator, artist, or leader has faced waves of ridicule before the world eventually acknowledged their genius. I tell you plainly, if you are to achieve anything beyond the ordinary, you must develop the courage to be misunderstood, opposed, and even ridiculed. The cure for the fear of criticism: you must train your mind to value your own judgment above the opinions of the crowd. Here is how. Adopt a definite chief aim. When your purpose is clear, the noise of others fades into the background. Strengthen self-reliance. Make small, independent decisions daily to build confidence in your own reasoning. Associate with independent thinkers. Spend time with those who admire courage more than conformity. Accept that criticism is inevitable. If no one is opposing you, you are probably doing nothing of importance. Focus on service, not approval. Measure your actions by the value they create, not by the applause they receive. The man who conquers the fear of criticism becomes a master of his own destiny. He moves forward without waiting for permission. He listens to others, but is not ruled by them. Such a man commands respect, not because he chases it, but because he lives by his own convictions. The third of the 6 basic fears is the fear of ill health. It robs men and women of their mental focus, destroys peace of mind, and often creates the very conditions it dreads. I have found that this fear is unique among the 6 because it is both a thief of energy and, in many cases, a self-fulfilling prophecy. A man who constantly expects sickness invites it into his life. The mind, dwelling upon disease, sends harmful vibrations to the body, lowering its resistance and disturbing its natural functions. In short, the body follows the orders given to it by the mind, whether those orders are for health or for illness. The subtle symptoms of the fear of ill health. This fear can be difficult to detect because it often hides behind common sense or prudence. You may recognize it in these forms: hypochondria, a constant expectation of illness, even in the absence of real symptoms. Excessive medical dependence, running to doctors for every minor discomfort, reinforcing the belief that the body is fragile. Health-related anxiety, persistent worry over germs, diet, climate, or conditions to the point where life is restricted. Talking constantly about illness, keeping the mind fixed on sickness instead of health. Self-imposed limitations, avoiding effort, travel, or opportunity for fear that health might suffer. The origin of this fear is often born of suggestion. We inherit it from the conversation of those around us. We read about epidemics, hear stories of illness, and accept them as proof that we too are in danger. Parents may unintentionally cultivate this fear by overprotecting their children or by discussing their own ailments in the child's presence. The truth is that the body is designed for health, vitality, and self-repair. It is the mind that weakens the body when fear occupies its thoughts. The cure for the fear of ill health. To banish this fear, one must reverse the process that created it. The same law of suggestion that implants fear can implant faith in health. Here is the method I recommend. Guard your thoughts about health. Never permit yourself to dwell on sickness. Speak of health, think of health, expect health. Feed the mind with healthy suggestions. Use affirmations such as, "Every day I grow stronger and more vital." Repeat until belief is established. Keep the body in motion. Activity generates vitality. A body in motion tends toward health. A body at rest tends toward decay. Avoid conversations about ailments. What you dwell upon, you invite into your life. Discussing sickness strengthens it in your mind. Associate with the cheerful and energetic. Energy is contagious. Surround yourself with those who radiate life. Engage in purposeful work. A mind absorbed in a great aim has little time to dwell on weakness. I tell you frankly, worry over health does more harm than poor health itself. I have known men who were physically strong but so filled with anxiety about their bodies that they were incapable of effective work. And I have known others afflicted in body who, because their minds were fixed on their purpose, accomplished miracles in spite of their ailments. When you conquer the fear of ill health, you gain not only peace of mind, but also a body strengthened by the positive commands of your own thoughts. The fourth of the 6 basic fears is the fear of loss of love. This fear strikes at the heart of human happiness. It is emotional in nature, yet it can be as crippling to success as the fear of poverty or ill health. It feeds on suspicion, jealousy, and mistrust, and it robs the mind of its ability to think calmly, logically, and creatively. I have seen capable men and women abandon promising careers, neglect opportunities, and even destroy their own reputations because their energy was consumed by this fear. It drains ambition like a leech, leaving nothing for the pursuit of a definite chief aim. The subtle symptoms of the fear of loss of love. This fear rarely presents itself as a calm statement like, "I am afraid of losing someone's affection." Instead, it manifests in destructive habits such as jealousy, constant suspicion without cause, which drives away the very affection one seeks to keep. Fault-finding, a critical attitude toward loved ones born of insecurity rather than genuine grievance. Over-possessiveness, seeking to control the thoughts and actions of others in order to keep their loyalty. Self-consciousness, worrying excessively about appearance, manners, or words in fear of disapproval. Sacrificing one's ambition, giving up personal goals to please or hold on to someone else. The origin of this fear. This fear is born of the human desire for connection, approval, and belonging, all healthy in themselves. But when a man's sense of worth depends entirely on another's opinion, he becomes a servant to that opinion. Early disappointments in love, betrayal, or abandonment can plant this fear deeply, and if not addressed, it will grow into a constant background anxiety that poisons relationships and stifles achievement. The cure for the fear of loss of love. The most effective way to destroy this fear is to develop an unshakable sense of self-reliance and self-respect. Love that is kept through fear is not love at all, it is bondage. Here is my prescription. Adopt a definite chief aim. Pour your energy into a purpose so compelling that you are not dependent on another person for your sense of identity. Build self-confidence through achievement. Each personal victory, no matter how small, strengthens your independence. Choose companions who encourage your growth. Seek relationships where mutual respect and trust are stronger than control or suspicion. Refuse to compromise your values. Love that requires the surrender of your principles is unworthy of the name. Cultivate faith in abundance. Just as wealth is not limited to one source, affection and companionship are not limited to one person. Believe that you can give and receive love freely without fear of loss. I tell you this plainly, when you are whole within yourself, you do not cling, you attract. And what you attract by confidence and self-respect will remain far more willingly than what you try to hold by fear. A man or woman free from the fear of loss of love is capable of giving true love, which is never born of possession, but of freedom. This freedom releases mental power, emotional stability, and an increased capacity to achieve one's definite chief aim. The fifth of the 6 basic fears is the fear of old age. This fear is not merely the dread of physical decline. It is, more dangerously, the belief that advancing years strip a man of his usefulness, his opportunity, and his power to achieve. It is a fear planted by false teaching and sustained by society's tendency to worship youth and overlook the wisdom that comes with experience. I have met men at 40 who believe themselves too old to begin again, and men at 70 who were still planting the seeds of ventures they knew would not bear fruit for a decade. The difference between them was not in years, but in their state of mind. The subtle symptoms of the fear of old age. This fear does not always announce itself with words like, "I am afraid of getting old." More often it appears in these ways. Retreating from opportunity, declining chances to learn or grow because my time has passed. Excusing inaction, using age as a reason to avoid change or effort. glorifying the past, speaking of one's best years as if they are forever behind, neglect of appearance and health, allowing oneself to physically decline through belief that it no longer matters, envy of youth, resentment toward those with more years ahead than behind. The origin of this fear. The fear of old age is largely the result of two false beliefs. First, that age inevitably brings poverty. Second, that it inevitably brings helplessness. In truth, age can bring with it the richest harvest if the seeds of ambition and purpose have been planted earlier. Society feeds this fear by placing a higher value on youthful energy than on seasoned wisdom, forgetting that every great civilization has been guided by men and women in the later seasons of life whose judgment was ripened by experience. The cure for the fear of old age. This fear is destroyed when a man replaces the belief that age is a disadvantage with the knowledge that age is an asset. Here is my method. Adopt a lifelong definite chief aim. The man who is always working toward a purpose never grows old, in the sense of being finished. Keep the mind and body active. Age does not cause stagnation. Stagnation causes age. Learn, move, and create every day. Associate with energetic thinkers. Surround yourself with people whose enthusiasm is contagious, regardless of their years. Refuse to speak of decline. The words you speak to yourself about aging become instructions to your mind and body. Focus on contribution. Measure life not by years lived, but by value created. I tell you truly, some of the greatest works in history were begun by men and women in what others would call the twilight of life. There is no twilight for the man who burns with the fire of a definite purpose. When the fear of old age is gone, time becomes your ally instead of your enemy. Each year adds to your store of wisdom, strengthens your resolve, and increases your capacity to serve. The sixth and final basic fear is the fear of death. It is the most universal of all fears, and the one that, in some form, touches every human life. It springs from our uncertainty about what lies beyond this life and from our instinct for self-preservation. Yet, when uncontrolled, this fear robs a man of the joy of living and the will to achieve. I have seen men postpone their ambitions, avoid travel, shun adventure, and deny themselves opportunities because of this fear. They call it caution, but in truth it is a silent surrender to an enemy they will one day meet regardless of their avoidance. The subtle symptoms of the fear of death. This fear may be obvious in some, but in others it hides behind everyday habits. Over-avoidance of risk, refusing even reasonable risks for fear they might shorten life. Constant anxiety about safety, worrying excessively about accidents, illness, or danger. Overprotectiveness toward loved ones, restricting their freedom to guard against imagined harm. Morbid obsession with mortality, thinking more about the end of life than the living of it. Avoidance of purpose, living in a passive state because of the belief that it will all end anyway. The origin of this fear. The fear of death is deeply tied to the unknown. Many inherit it from religious misinterpretations, from grim cultural traditions, or from witnessing tragedy. It is often reinforced by the suggestion that death is a loss, rather than a natural transition in the great order of life. Yet I tell you plainly, the man who lives each day in harmony with his conscience, with a definite chief aim, and with the habit of rendering useful service, will have little reason to fear death. For such a man, the end of life is not a defeat, but the closing of a well-run race. The cure for the fear of death. This fear can be transformed, not by denying mortality, but by accepting it as a reason to live more fully. Adopt the philosophy of service. When your life is dedicated to leaving value behind, death becomes the conclusion of a worthwhile mission. Live. According to a definite chief aim, purpose crowds out fear. A man busy building his dream does not dwell on its ending. Accept death as natural. Study the cycles of life in nature. Everything passes through seasons. Death is but another transformation. Practice gratitude for the present moment. Fear of the future fades when the present is lived to its fullest. strengthen faith, whether through religion, philosophy, or personal belief. Cultivate confidence that life's end is not the end of all things. I have found that those who fear death most are often those who have not truly lived. The antidote is simple. Fill your days with work that inspires you, service that uplifts others, and a pursuit that excites your soul. When you live in this manner, the fear of death loses its grip. You will face the future with calm assurance, knowing that your time, whenever it comes, will find you at work on something that matters.